what enrichment is, because a lot of times we think about it as being a lot of toys for them to play with. And actually, she could put, depending on who's here, we can do that. But enrichment is actually the well-being of the dog. So it's a much broader picture. It's a whole, like a holistic view of things. So what we like to do is talk about things like meeting your dog's needs and finding ways that your dog doesn't drive you crazy, because they actually have outlets for the things that are natural for them to do. So let your dog be a dog. You know, finding things that they enjoy to do, and also lower their stress levels. A lot of times you guys have these labs. How many of them, those obsessive fetch, fetch, fetch? A lot of times we like to bring that down and give them other things to do so that they can do nose work, do trick training like Phyllis was just doing. If you're doing training like a 2 minutes a day, or 2 minutes a session, you can get, 6 sessions in, and that's 12 minutes of your day. So these are just ways that you build a relationship with your dog. You're playing attention games. And I like to say it's beyond the obedience of old. So this isn't about obedience and marching next to you and everything like that. It's like having a dog who's able to fit into your family, who's able to go out with you and you exist. Because sometimes they're out there and it's really hard to get their attention. So the other things, I have my little list here so I can go down the list and talk about them. So the very first thing at the bottom that's like our foundation is health and veterinary. So that's something we never really think about, that our dogs need to have good health care, good veterinary care. And we also want to look into how do they do at the vet. So we look at things like husbandry and management. So we teach them things in order to help them go to the vet and be able to get a shot and not need to be restrained and held down. To be able to teach them, for instance, if they're nervous, we teach them to wear a muzzle. In fact, teaching every dog to wear a muzzle is a really good idea, because there's a lot of dogs, they have pain, they're going to bite. It's a normal thing for dogs to do. So we do it in a very positive way. I don't know if you were here for Phyllis's. I think she was doing some touch, hand target. And at first you're just getting the dog to target it. And then you get them to put it on in a slow manner. And then you've got a dog who's comfortable doing this if they need to go to the vet. So that's one of the first parts of enrichment. Then there's hygiene. Is your dog getting the best care for their hygiene? Like, do they need baths? Do they need nail trims? Do they need ear cleanings? Things like that. And those are their needs. But then there's also the part of giving them a way to do it that's comfortable for them. And there's a lot of training out there now that has a lot to do with agency, giving your dog agency, giving them control over what they do, and they're allowed to say no. So you teach them things like a chin rest. It's something where you teach your dog to put their chin on your lap or on a chair or in your hands. And when you're at the vet, you teach them, or doing a nail trim, they put their chin down or they lie on their side. You teach them to lie on their side. You teach them to target something and hold the target. And if they move away, that means you stop. And then they offer it again. It's a start and stop button. And they understand that they're in a position that they're allowing you to do something. So that's another part of enrichment, is hygiene, and how can we give our dogs more agency? Because think about it, consent. These are big buzzwords in our world. And if we start to think about our dogs as needing those same kind of considerations, a lot of our behaviors, sometimes we'll go in, Phyllis will vouch for this, we go into folks' homes and we're just looking around and saying, we didn't really think about how they're feeling in this situation. Because sometimes we don't understand exactly, and our society hasn't talked about it that way. It's always been, they are obedient, they are eager to please, which I'm not saying they don't love us, but they're generally not sitting around like, how can I please you? But we can build a relationship where our dogs are much more comfortable with us. So then there's diet and nutrition, obviously. These are things we always think about. Water, making sure they're well fed. Physical exercise. Physical exercise is something that they do need. They need it. You want to be careful with that, though. One of the kind of myths about that can be that our dog needs to be this athlete. They need to run for several hours, or they have to go to a daycare and run all day, or things like that. They actually need calm exercise sometimes. And people sometimes will have a dog, they turn into an athlete. So if you put a dog somewhere where you are not an athlete, but you send your dog to get these athletic things, then you have a dog that you can't keep up with. Also, things like I brought up fetching, which is a wonderful activity, but if your dog is obsessive with that and you're having some kind of anxiety and overstimulation issues, that's something you want to limit and teach them how to relax around the ball. So exercise is something, a tired dog is not a good dog. I think that's where I was going with this. There's the idea that if you get a dog who goes somewhere and they're so tired that they're tired the next day and they can't do anything, or they're sleeping all day, think about it, that's not normal. So we want them to be getting exercise, but it's good health-wise. Sensory stimulation, that's a really big deal. That's all of the senses. Nose is probably the very biggest one. We saw there was somebody here doing nose work and set out a track for you. And nose work can easily, or nose games can also be feeding your dog. I didn't bring this out because I thought it would be a bad idea with a bunch of lads. This is kiddie pool things, but you can also just take your dog's toy bin, and instead of feeding them in a bowl, you dump their kibble in the toy bin, and they go digging through it and find it. You never need to feed your dog in a bowl. It's not really natural for them. It's not like it's terrible to do, because sometimes you're in a hurry. But the other thing, I have a few dogs, so one of them will get the toy bin, one of them will get it in the backyard. I am a lazy dog trainer. I'm not out there drilling my dogs, doing all this stuff, but I am a dog pet owner and I'm a dog pet trainer. And I want dogs who are happy with me or hanging out with me, that I don't have to worry about problems in my home and they're getting their needs met. So sensory, having scents that are different. Just sometimes, as long as they're safe scents, you can put things that they've never smelled before. Plants, taking them to different gardens, things like that. Letting them walk on a long line and let them take you on a walk. And go for a walk with them. Try to change our attitude of walking our dogs and making it more about going for a walk with our dogs. So if we're keeping them always at heel position, or they're just walking, or even running sometimes, it's not that it's bad to run with your dog, but if your dog only gets out and runs with you, they're pretty much just next to you and they don't get the chance to smell around. So having a long line, letting them do the stuff, like right over here, there's a dog being a dog. Rolling around in the grass. I work at a shelter, or I volunteer at a shelter, and I take these dogs out in the woods, and as soon as we get into the woods on the long line, these dogs stop dragging. And they put their nose to the ground, they roll around, they have a good time, and they decompress. So doing nose games is one of the best things you can do with a dog. It lowers their stress levels, and so that's a really great thing. Safety and security. Let's talk about that a little bit, because safety means, okay, my dog is in a safe home. I've puppy-proofed it. I have a fence. I have, I've kept them from eating things that are poisonous. Things like that is safe. You know your dog is safe. Security is a totally different thing, and many of you who've had rescue dogs understand this. He's okay, but he's nervous, or why are you upset? Everything's good. You have this wonderful home. It's safe here, and it's okay if Uncle Joe comes in. It's all right. But a lot of dogs, when security is different than safety, because it's their awareness of what that is. So security is how they feel about it. Like if I don't like to fly in a plane, I don't feel secure in the plane, even though I know driving in the car is worse, and I'm driving around and that's not safe. So it's about how do they actually feel. We don't get to say what somebody else is nervous about. And the same with the dogs. So safety and security are something to consider. And so these are things that you go down the list and you figure out, are there ways you can improve these things? Or are there ways these needs are being met? So foraging is another thing, having them search for things. That is a normal thing for dogs to do. Have you ever, your dog gets loose, now these guys went straight to the water on that. But say your dog gets loose, often they don't go running. Like we think they need to run all the time. There are some that do, but mostly they get out and they zigzag and they're out there looking for stuff. How many people have had puppies that are constantly eating stones and bark in your backyard? And they're just, you put them in the backyard and it's like, I can't let them out without a leash. If you actually give them things to scavenge for, like their food, they will often not go for the acorns. And especially things, rocks especially, I don't know what it is with puppies. I really love rocks. But, you know, you do often find that dogs that are constantly picking things up on their walks, where they're really intent on that. Often they've been stopped from doing it a lot, and they need that outlet. So a lot of times, like a dog who won't walk on a walk, things like that, letting them have a little more freedom, they'll often move for us. But foraging is absolutely important. Instinctual behaviors. So these guys have a lot of breed typical behaviors. We don't say specific because there's many dogs that don't do those things. Some of them won't swim. But most labs will chase a ball and go in the water. So we do want to give them those field kind of behaviors. We do want to give them the retrieving. We maybe don't want it to be something that's over the top. It's something that we give them in a set situation depending on their own well-being. Nose work is good for them. They're hunting dogs. So there isn't a dog that's really not good for. So finding things that are species and breed typical. Digging, I know a lot of people hate to hear this, but that's really good for your dog. If you've got a digger, often finding a place in your yard that you can block off that they can dig, bury stuff for them, let them dig it up, aim them at that area. I know I have one that digs and plays tug with roots. So, I mean, it's just, those are good behaviors. These are things that dogs do. Chewing things up is often a lab typical behavior. Giving them cardboard boxes, as long as they won't eat it, also a lab typical behavior. And is eating everything they tear up. But if they will tear up stuffed toys, buy cheap stuffed toys instead of those expensive dog stuffed toys. If they won't eat it, let them tear stuff up. I get them used. People give kids all kinds of stuffed toys and they don't want them. So social interaction. This right here is really great. These are all dogs who are really comfortable with each other. I mean, I think we've seen a couple of times where they're not comfortable up close on leashes. And that's not uncommon. Here we go. Hey guys! And so what I would do with this is get up and let's go. Come on, let's go. Yay! So I just move them a little away from each other because this is a really close area and it doesn't mean that they are bad or anything like that. And it doesn't mean you have to go away. But if you just, instead of trying to stop them, you're sort of like, hey, let's go, and let them get some space because they're sort of crowded in around chairs and things like that. So social interaction also has to do with us learning body language. There's a little thing that I print up. I couldn't get it to print right, so I did a screenshot and printed it about body language. So please feel free to take that. There's also one about your dog's emotional touch. You know, you hear that about people too. You've got just so many spoons, or you've got the emotional cup, all of these things. But your dog needs those things filled. And then they also need things not to spill over. So we're looking for ways that we can keep them comfortable in situations. You understand, oh, okay, my dog needs to move away. But it doesn't need to be a fight. It's like, hey, let's go. And they go away and they're pretty happy to do so, and then they're much more relaxed. Being on a leash is very difficult. Mental exercise is talking about all the enrichment stuff you usually think of. Rolling these around. A lot of people just buy those little puzzles that they figure out in like a minute. They're great and everything, and I use them in certain training ways where it's like you do the behavior and then you release to the puzzle. But I find most dogs figure them out really fast. These are things that I feed them in mostly. This rolls around, and I'm not going to do it here because we might have a little argument. These are nice. I don't leave them out for them, not just because they'll chew them up, because some dogs won't. But if you leave it out, it's not a special thing. So we want them to actually have their meals in this, or when you've got the evening crazies, if any of you got the young ones, where right at about 7 o'clock when you're trying to relax, save some kibble for them and let them find it. This is one that you put the kibble in. This a lot of labs would like. They throw it around. It's harder. and you can unscrew it and put kibble in it and close it up. This is another new one called, I forget. This one unscrews and it comes with little things you freeze that fit in it, but I just stuff things in it and I freeze it. And these are things I leave for them to lick. Licking is a calming behavior. So we're using food because food is a primal thing. It's something they need. And they would usually do things, it's not about working for it. There's something called contra freeloading, which is you can put down a bowl and then you can also put down some kind of activity, and they will often go to the activity. I have dogs that won't eat their kibble. And people are like, they won't eat their kibble. First of all, pick it up if they don't, and don't give it to them again, because we want them in meals. But if you put it in these things, they will often eat their kibble. Foraging, they'll often eat their kibble. And at first you do it kind of carefully. You can also put their kibble in the fridge with just a piece of chicken or hot dog or something in there with it, and it makes the kibble stink a little bit more. So this is another one that's an Orby ball that rolls around. Licky mats. So when we were talking about husbandry, you can stick these to a bathtub, let them lick it. Use squeezed cheese, or I use goat cheese sometimes, that's their special. And then canned food. Mine have been outside a lot. They do go in the dishwasher. I don't have one, so sometimes they're not as clean. But you can stick it to the floor also, so that if you want to teach them mats, learning to lie on a mat and relax, these can be there for them, and it can be a good thing like that. So that's really good for a dog if they're not going to resource guard it, that you can do things like cleaning their ears, make those things good for them. But these are all, you know, mental exercise, things like that. Giving them independence, agency, letting your dog choose what they want to do. The only time your dog goes out is when you take them. So we forget they're captive animals. They are actually captive animals. So they don't get to go for a walk when they want to. They don't get to usually go where they want to. We take them and we decide where to go, and we often call them stubborn. Like, oh, they won't go this way. And I'm not suggesting you let your dog go everywhere. Safety is obviously a concern, things like that. But if we start to look at the difference in our lives, COVID was a great example. When you're sitting around, how often did we say, I've heard it before, that dogs, oh, I wish I had my dog's life, and I could lie around on the couch all day and somebody gave me food and I didn't have to do anything. We don't like that very much. So think about, what does your dog do all day? What do they do? And think of all the things we do all day. So even if we're not doing much and we're on the couch, we're often watching TV, or we're reading, or we're on our phones, or we're doing things that are stimulating us. Unless we offer them opportunity for that, they aren't going to be able to do it. And in independence, we want them to actually go seek those things out on their own. We want them to be able to play over there. You don't need to play with your dog 24 hours a day. I'm certainly not going to entertain my dog all day. But I do give them opportunities to do things by themselves that are going to engage their brain and engage them physically and have them feel better, you know, and have that outlet. Because we want to start to think about, and there's so much research in this, and it's a new way of thinking, but we really want to think about how they really feel. They are toddlers, basically, and you think about how many feelings toddlers have. They don't share very well. That's normal. We can work on it, but it's pretty normal. But they also feel pain, they feel fear, they feel a lot of different things that we don't think about. Some of them are uncomfortable at parties, and some of them aren't. You know, are you a nightclub dog or a library dog? You know, there's a lot of different personalities, and figure out who your dog is. I was at a festival downtown recently. Tons of dogs down there. Hot, many of them on collars that I don't want to talk about, and all of them look miserable. Even the ones that weren't. They don't want to be at a festival. Like, this is a dog fest activity. This is enjoyable for these dogs especially. They're able to play. People have been smart about bringing dogs that are able to play. So that's something that you guys set up so that it's a safe place for dogs and they can come and do these things. But a festival with live music that's loud and you're looking at things, cocktail parties, They're fundraisers sometimes, and everyone brings the dogs. It's not a dog activity. So look at what a dog activity is and do those with your dog. Travel can be great, but you know, we want to just think about what they need to do. Okay? Environment, things like that we don't think about. There's certain dogs that don't want to walk on floors. We'll come in and find out that a behavior problem actually has to do with a dog being afraid of the floor. And it's just, you don't think of these things. I had a dog who was afraid of a telephone pole. And it turned out to, you know, there was something that happened with that telephone pole. And we just have to, it's like mystery. We have to kind of decide or go on a little search and what's going on and find it out. It's, you know, Phyllis will tell you, it's like, it's a very creative process and we love doing it. We also love to help people learn how to understand their dogs. This is a great book. I'm constantly trying to sell people on it. It looks like a kid's book, and it is great for kids. It's absolutely fabulous. I'll get families whose kids have this, and when I come back for their next visit, they're like, the kids are telling me everything. That's not mine, or maybe it is. I didn't think I had treats. So it's called Doggy Language. It's amazing. It's about 10 bucks, and it's going to tell you what your dog is doing. And this is a really quick little handout by the same woman who illustrated this. She illustrates a lot of different things. Her name is Lily Chin. All the behavior folks use that. So she's wonderful. It's 10 bucks, and it's called Doggy Language. Calming is another thing. So many people are really interested in exercising their dogs. One of the first things we're going to come in with a reactive dog is often telling you not to walk your dog out when they're not able to enjoy yourself. If you're out there and it's a stressful situation, we want your dog to learn to calm first. So we do a lot of exercises and protocols that help the dogs learn how to calm down. And one of the best things, probably the first thing I go in and tell people, is to teach your dog to forage, teach your dog to use their nose. Go out there, let them sniff. I can't tell you what I hate this term, game changer it is, but it can make such a big difference in your dog's life. To be able to forage for their food, it can change how they feel. The veterinary, one of the veterinary behaviorists we work with a lot in Virginia, has nose work trainers in her office. So she has other trainers also, but she sets that up because it's that important for them. It's the sense that they use the most. Often we're verbal, we talk to them all the time. Their body is how they talk. And so hand signals work really well, work better often than the verbal, okay? So I think I'm at the end. Good timing. Does anybody have any questions or anything? If you do, huh? Yeah. So you're good. I was the peanut gallery out there. I'm like, yes, that's good. You know, you were quiet. She's trying to talk, I'm like, great timing there. I'm more of a party dog than Phyllis, I guess. So I'm a reactive dog. So yeah, please, yeah, the book is amazing and it tells you a lot. So that's what I should have gotten for your raffle.
What?
That book, I should have gotten it for your raffle.
Oh, what is it called again?
Doggy Language by Lily Chin.
Okay.
Also, Lily Chin, these little cartoons she does, you can go on Etsy and look her up, and she does a really quick cartoon of your dog. And it's like under 20 bucks. It's really cute.
Oh, how fun.
Yeah, she does it in like a post, whatever
Little
size.
caricature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's really neat. And then there's something about the emotional cup. I was gonna print more things, but I'm the flaky dog. So I come out here, some stuff. So, all right. I think there's a walk,
Thank
right?
you, Alexis. Yes, there is.
Where do you walk?